I used to think replacing a laptop with an iPad was impossible, until I accidentally did it. The 11-inch iPad Pro, small enough to forget in your bag, powerful enough to never forget. I've been pretty vocal that the iPad is not a laptop replacement. I segregated these two product categories in my head while I had the iPad Air 4 and the M1 MacBook Air. However, the more I use the iPad Pro, the more I understand all of these videos flooding YouTube about, can I replace my MacBook with the iPad Pro? Because of this, when I bought the iPad Pro, I intentionally kept the MacBook Air. For me, when I had the iPad Air 4 and Magic Keyboard, it just didn't have enough power to replace the laptop for me. And when I downgraded in size to the iPad mini, I definitely didn't have enough power on that device to replace my MacBook Air. It was still a staple for travel for me when I needed to do things like video editing or photo editing on the go, where it's just easier for me to have a bigger screen and a bigger trackpad in order to manage those tasks. I was adamant that I still needed a laptop. Lately, I've been wondering whether I should have sold the M1 MacBook Air. Since buying the iPad Pro, I've noticed my productivity skyrocket, and I rekindled the joy that I had on working on the iPad, same feeling that I felt on the iPad Air 4 with Magic Keyboard combo. My creativity has been flourishing, and I've genuinely been enjoying using the iPad Pro. How far can you push the iPad Pro though? The M4 is a highly capable chip, we all know that. It scores well in the benchmarks, which you won't see any of that here. I prefer to test devices by actually using them in day-to-day life. But for me, the more complex the task is on the iPad, the more difficult it is to actually complete. Personally, I think Apple should quit marketing the iPad Pro as a laptop replacement and instead market it as the ultimate productivity device. Maybe that only works for productivity nerds like me, but I'm not even sure what being pro means anymore, and I'm not sure that Apple does either. The iPad Pro is an extremely capable device, but I think the reality is that most people actually aren't going out to replace their laptop with an iPad, or if they were able to do that, they would have done it years ago. The needs of somebody making a video on YouTube, for instance, includes things like video and photo editing, which for me are easier to do on a desktop or laptop computer, whereas the needs of your everyday average person or retiree might be checking emails and playing Wordle. The iPad definitely can take the place of a laptop in that instance. In general, we've seen the rise of Pro apps on the iPad over the years. Now you can get Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro on the iPad, in addition to things like DaVinci Resolve and LumaFusion for video editing. However, I find that most of these tasks are better done on a desktop computer for me. I like having the mouse and keyboard in order to do these types of things, and they just work better and faster, obviously with a more powerful device like a Mac desktop. And Apple touts this as its thinnest device ever, which is true. But the form factor, when you pair it with the Magic Keyboard from a weight perspective, really doesn't feel all that different to me than a MacBook Air. For me, the Mac Studio and iPad Pro is actually a dynamite combination. If I were traveling more often, I would definitely prefer something like a MacBook Pro in place of the iPad, and I might get rid of the desktop in that instance. But for my current situation where I travel for work maybe once or twice a year, the iPad can definitely fit the bill on those trips for my only personal device, personal compute device, keep me occupied on the flights, and if I was taking some photos and videos, it's more than capable to edit those in a pinch if I needed to. However, there's nothing wrong with waiting until I get home either to edit the videos on my desktop computer. There are, however, a few downsides to the Magic Keyboard and iPad Pro combo. It is wobbly. Most of the reviewers had mentioned this in their review, and when you're sitting on the couch, the iPad, and trying to type, if you let your hands come off of the keyboard and you're relieving the pressure, the iPad naturally wants to fall forward off of your lap. It doesn't actually fall over, but it kind of balances on the hinge in a strange, un-Apple-like way. I don't recall having this with the previous generation. Maybe it was slightly more stable, and it's a little disappointing because on the couch is probably my preferred place to use the iPad. Now, it's not all bad with the Magic Keyboard. The revised touchpad with the haptic feedback is really great. It's a lot quieter for those of you that have a significant other in the room with you trying to watch TV tapping loudly away on the previous generation. That's resolved here. The clicks are nice and quiet. And I think the typing experience is a little bit more smooth and a little bit quieter as well. I haven't obviously tested the sound of those back to back, but to me it feels a little bit better than the last gen. And there is something about the Magic Keyboard that I can't quite put into words. It's maybe that I'm sitting on the couch, it's a little less serious, there's a little bit less pressure maybe when writing, but I find that I can just go from word to word, paragraph to paragraph, and I end up with, a full script or a lot more in the journal for that day compared to if I'm typing on this desktop computer here. I also enjoy the combo of touch and type that you get on the iPad with the Magic Keyboard, and that's not replicated anywhere else in the Apple ecosystem. I feel like it can't be that hard to market from the team that came up with 1,000 songs in your pocket. Figure out some catchy saying for how this combination just has the words flying onto the page. Overall, the interface is pretty easy to use. It might be a little confusing at first to try to figure out when you need to be typing, when you need to be tapping on the screen, but the combination of typing and touch is very intuitive once you get the hang of it, and I find multitasking and dragging and dropping stuff, formatting different things in Apple Notes and reminders is really easy with the combo touch input. Battery life anecdotally has been pretty good. I charge it maybe every 5-ish days or so like once a week, which is pretty good considering how often I use it. Maybe not every night, but every other night. So there is a lot of standby time with the iPad. This M4 chip seems to be slightly more power hungry maybe than my M1 MacBook Air, and definitely the older iPad Air Gen 4. It seems like I could have left those devices for weeks on end to plug in, but that's probably not the reality anyways. Though I do think the new OLED panel and the powerful M4 chip are probably contributing to what I'm noticing as slightly less battery life than maybe I'm used to. And the new Apple Pencil Pro is a big step up from the previous Pencil in my opinion, but I think the most noticeable difference for me is the adaptive screen refresh rate on this OLED panel. Being stuck at 60 Hz on the iPad Air, you could definitely notice a little bit of lag as you're writing, and the pencil is struggling to keep up. Here, everything is nice and smooth as you're writing for the input method via the pencil, and I actually think that's one place where this is worth the upgrade to the iPad Pro over the Air. If you're going to be doing a lot of drawing or a lot of writing, and the Apple Pencil is going to be your main input method to the iPad, I definitely would recommend the Pro over the Air in that instance. My usage of MacBook Air over the last few weeks since buying the iPad Pro has simply plummeted. So I'm not sure it really matters if the iPad Pro is truly Pro, but it does function as a pretty good laptop replacement in my opinion. I do think that the iPad Pro could replace a laptop for most people, given that their compute needs are probably somewhere below what I'm doing on the iPad Pro, and there's plenty of people using the iPad Pro that do more complex video editing and photo editing than I do. But your everyday average person checking email, browsing the internet, going on their favorite apps, playing some games, the iPad Pro is a perfect laptop replacement. And the problem does come down to use case. So most of the videos you watch on YouTube, these people are working with large video files. They need a file management system, which is admittedly bad on the iPad. They are used to whatever software they're using on their desktop computer, be it Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, or Premiere Pro, and making the jump over to a smaller screen in all likelihood and slightly less capable hardware is probably a non-starter for those people. I think that's why you see a lot of these Can my iPad replace a laptop video? End up with the answer being no. They try it out for a week to be the only computer, but it just isn't up to the tasks like a desktop is. And that makes sense. It's a lot lighter, it's a lot less powerful. It's a nice portable device, but it still has plenty of power. Doing things like managing a task list or calendar appointments is definitely easier on a bigger screen. So I like the iPad for that over something like the iPhone. And doing it on the couch makes it maybe slightly less intimidating. So I come up with good ideas and have the ability to let my creativity flow naturally. So while I do think it would be cool to have a touch interface Mac OS, or maybe even an iPad that runs Mac OS at this point, I think it's unlikely that that's going to happen. But for now, the iPad Pro is as close as you could get to that sort of experience. For me, one of my main use cases for the iPad Pro is productivity. Writing in Apple Notes, checking and managing Apple reminders and calendar appointments is something that I like to have the bigger screen real estate for, and the touch interface on the iPad is a lot easier to move those things around, link notes between reminders and notes. And it's a nice break from my main workstation to get me out of the same chair for just a little bit of time into a different environment. Often that can spark new ideas and new creativity. It feels far less formal than my normal workstation, but still powerful enough that it lets me get a significant amount of tasks done, all while enjoying a tech product that makes my life better. At the end of the day, that's all I can ask for. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Until next time, later.